This podcast is brought to you by Reynolds & Reynolds, the industry leader in automotive technology. Learn how inadequate data may be impacting your used vehicle department at rayray.com/used cars. That's rey.com/used-cars.
Want to dive deeper into the topics you hear about on Daily Drive? We're offering listeners a special offer, 20% off a 1-year Automotive News digital subscription. That gets you access to all of our news, information, and analysis made for automotive industry leaders like you. Go to autonews.com/Daily Drive promo to redeem. Welcome to Daily Drive for Friday, December 8th, 2023. I'm Jamie Butters, Executive Editor of Automotive News here in Detroit.
And I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Stellantis cuts jobs at 2 Jeep assembly plants. Dealers are increasingly pessimistic heading into 2024. And the U.S. self-driving industry seeks federal support, citing risk from China. Plus, Volvo Cars Marin Parts and Service Director Chris Vann joins the show to talk about his success in building trust and collaboration in his service department.
You build a high-trust environment where things get done better, get done more cheaply, and you don't have as many mistakes, errors. The natural response is then to care about where you work.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry.
Stellantis says it plans to eliminate production shifts at 2 assembly plants because it needs to build fewer SUVs to meet stricter emission standards. The cuts could affect thousands of workers. The company's plant in Toledo, Ohio, which builds the Jeep Wrangler and Gladiator, and one of 2 Jeep Grand Cherokee plants in Detroit, will move from 3 shifts to 2. The automaker said in an emailed statement that changes will be effective as soon as February 5th. It did not provide specific numbers. Together, the plants employ more than 10,000 workers. Media reports in Toledo said up to 1,200 people could be laid off at that plant.
The return to more normal market conditions has soured auto dealers' moods heading into the new year. That's according to Cox Automotive's latest Dealer Sentiment Index survey. Retailers are increasingly pessimistic, even as they continue to see strong profits. Franchise dealers panned their fourth quarter market. For the first time in the history of the survey, the typically optimistic industry had an even worse outlook for the quarter ahead. Index results greater than 50 indicate that dealers view conditions as positive or improving. A score of 50 is neutral. Franchised auto dealers rated their current market a 49, down from 57 in the third quarter and 52 a year ago. It's the worst sentiment since the second quarter of 2020, the first full quarter of the COVID-19 pandemic in the U.S., before profits soared as new vehicles became scarce.
A coalition of groups representing the self-driving industry say the U.S. Transportation Department needs to support the development of autonomous vehicles. It says the nation industry risks losing out to competitors from China. The coalition includes the Autonomous Vehicle Industry Association, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, and others. In a letter to Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, the coalition says, quote, "The AV industry is at a critical juncture and in need of strong leadership from U.S. DOT. The industry faces new headwinds after California in October suspended the permit of General Motors' Cruise robotaxis to test on public roads, saying they were a risk to the public following a series of accidents. Legislation to speed robotaxi deployment has stalled in Congress for more than 5 years. A spokesperson for Buttigieg did not immediately comment.
And General Motors has signed a joint agreement with truck manufacturer Autocar Industries to develop a range of vehicles powered by hydrogen fuel cells. The first truck is slated to begin production in 2026. The initial suite of vehicles will include cement mixers, roll-off trucks, and dump trucks. Those vehicles share a common architecture. Later, the joint venture will produce garbage trucks and terminal tractors. The venture will leverage GM's hydrogen fuel cell research and development unit, Hydrotech. Vehicles will be built at Autocar's plant in Birmingham, Alabama. And those are today's headlines. Jamie, Stellantis is eliminating shifts at 2 assembly plants, and earlier this week, CEO Carlos Tavares touted that Stellantis, and he said this, quote, How to get a profitable pricing at the core of the market is an equation that you can only solve if you reduce costs. And this is what we are reasonably good at. Jamie, are these shift cuts an example of that?
Not exactly. It obviously, when you take out the some of these higher end vehicles, that might lower the company's average price. But of course, you want to sell at a high price to cover the high costs. What I think the real connection is between the two is they're both responses to societal, regulatory, government pressures to offer more fuel efficient vehicles, which is squeezing out some of those big money makers from Jeep and Ram, and then the need to offer EVs that can be sold in large numbers and profitably. So they're really working at both ends, being pushed by regulators on both segments of the market. It's a real challenge.
Gotcha. Coming up, we'll hear from Service Department Director Chris Vann about his approach to building a more collaborative workplace. That's next on Daily Drive.
The auto industry's shift to carbon neutrality is here and it's accelerating. But is it enough?
This is a moral imperative, an economic imperative, a moment of peril, but also a moment of extraordinary possibilities.
No more hesitancy, no more excuses, no more waiting for the others to move first. There is simply no more time for that.
Driving to Zero is a new podcast series from Automotive News that looks at the auto industry's roadmap to carbon neutrality. We take a big picture look at the environmental, political, and social trends pushing the move toward a greener future. And we pull back the curtain on how these decisions are being made at the highest levels.
I said, the headline that you need is GM believes in an all-electric future. And I think Dan Ammon and Mary Barra pretty much said the same thing, which is like, but we don't.
Spoiler alert, they came around to that idea. Find out how and much more. I'm Jake Neer. Join me and Automotive News Executive Editor Jamie Butters on Driving to Zero, available now wherever you get your podcasts.
Lack of inventory, increased auction fees, and a volatile market means stocking your lot can be challenging these days. To be successful, you have to move fast. You need to make decisions quickly at auction. You need to inspect trade-ins and decide on an offer that will benefit you without slowing down the sales process. You need to appraise and price vehicles with the most up-to-date information possible in a market that can change quickly. But the data you rely on to make these decisions could be holding you back. How often do you find yourself manually filtering through comps because there are outliers that don't match the vehicle you're appraising? When unexpected mechanical issues come up, how much time do you have to spend looking back through comps to reprice the vehicle and determine if the reconditioning costs are worth it? How long do you spend searching through individual auction and third-party websites for the inventory you need? These problems affect the entire used vehicle process, from acquisition to appraisal to merchandising. Visit rayray.com/usedcars to explore how old and irrelevant vehicle information may be holding you back and discover how to make improvements for faster, more accurate, and more profitable decisions. That's rey.com/used-cars.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Jamie Butters with Kellen Walker. Every service visit is an opportunity for an employee to help a customer. That's according to Chris Vann, Service and Parts Director at Volvo Cars Marin in California. Vann said it's his daily goal to spread this idea of helping throughout his service department. Vann spoke with Automotive News Senior Editor Dan Shine about leadership and creating a good culture in service.
Chris, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dan.
Now, you and I met at the Best Dealerships to Work For / Retail Forum Chicago back in the end of October. You were honored as kind of a best practice spotlight during the event. And also, I think your dealership won awarded Best Dealership to Work For. And I know culture, mentorship, leadership is kind of very near and dear to you. You spoke a lot about it, and it seems like it's such a core of what the dealership is all about. Tell me a little bit about how you got into this. You've been in the business a long time. When did kind of maybe the light bulb go off, or how did you learn to kind of maybe be a good leader, to be someone who can kind of spread a good culture? How did you come into that, being able to do that?
So Dan, I've been doing some version of what I do now as a parts and service director. So as a parts manager, as a service manager, I worked in collision repair for 15 years, some version of it for like 38 years. And somewhere maybe 15, 20 years ago, I started thinking, well, what do you actually do? You know, sometimes it was making sure all the parts are in the right place. Sometimes it was making sure you got a certain number of cars fixed in a day. And slowly evolved that really what brought me what made me happy, what I really felt like I was doing, like at the core, was helping people. And that could be a customer coming over the drive, or someone needed a part, someone needed something, and I was running departments that could help them. And I remember when I first took over a parts department, we had a little problem with phones being picked up and by parts advisors. It's not a new thing. Sometimes it's just different personality conflict or different personality emphasis, let's say. And I made it pretty simple. I said, when someone calls the parts department, they want a part, and we can get them parts because that's what we do. So that's an opportunity to help someone. And that was kind of maybe the beginning of me just simplifying it to like really the core of my career, maybe my life, maybe when I'm doing the best thing and the thing that is closest to what I feel is important is I'm helping people. And I have that, I have that ability. And, in so many of my jobs, they've given me the tools to do it. They've given me enormous resources, personnel, et cetera. So I feel really fortunate that I have that opportunity to actually do it. I can execute it every single day. I can help people. And, like right now, I have, I think tomorrow, 32 appointments. So I have 32 opportunities to help people tomorrow. And it used to be at the very beginning of it, used to be this, I want to help people, but what does it cost me? And it was, for some reason, I saw it as this balance. Well, I can't spend too much money and that slowly changed over time to say, no, that's not the way it works at all. Is you build a business that helps people and the money follows. You can't say, I can only spend this much helping people. If you come at it from that, or at least what I experienced, if I come at it from that direction, I'm then not focused on how I'm going to fulfill a need or help someone. I'm then focused on how I'm going to save money by helping them while I help them. And maybe the third evolution, or as it became more integrated, I realized that it wasn't just my customers. I have an opportunity, like right now, 25 people that are direct reports. I have an opportunity to help them in so many ways. And it's really obvious, like when I get to hire someone, that's like one of my favorite days, right? I got to hire someone. Someone wanted a job. I had an opening. We're going to help each other out. This is going to be great. Sometimes that fades over time. You kind of forget that moment where you think you're going to fulfill a need and help someone. But really, I have that opportunity every day. So I have a technician. He's been doing it a year. He wants to become a master tech. What's my next step to doing that? When I can align what's good for my business, because if you don't run a business successfully, you get zero chances to help people, right? So that's sort of a baseline. You have to do your business correctly. But then you have all these opportunities to help people. And I believe in whatever success I've had has been based on the fact that helping people, whether they be customers or employees, get what they want, or help them define what they want. And when you consistently concentrate on fulfilling that, you're successful. The success comes with it. And that's probably doubly true for employees. That's probably doubly true. Like if you honestly are trying to help them get to where they want to be, the rewards for everyone are incredible.
So how do you instill kind of that culture of helping the customer every day, doing a good deed, and are you leading by example? Are you leading with words? Or is it training involved? How do you get the rest of those direct reports to you on board with your thinking?
So maybe in this industry, maybe there's other industries like this. I had some reticence at first to come out and just say, hey, we're here to help people. We have 32 chances tomorrow. What are we going to do? What's going to be great? But I overcame that reticence, and I literally say that to my crew. Like, hey, how many appointments do we have today? We have 30 appointments. We have 30 chances to help someone, to make someone happy, to improve their lives a little bit. So let's get all of those. I also remind people, because this happens to me, is, it doesn't happen every day that a customer says, thanks you, or thanks you explicitly, like, thank you so much. I had this problem. You solved it this way. And now my life has improved this way. Sometimes they do. They say, I got a flat tire. You came in, you guys helped me. I was able to pick up my daughter from ballet. Sometimes you hear it that way. But those things, when they happen to us, and I think this is true, it's not true universally, of course, because people have their own points of view. But with my crew anyway, they say to my face, yeah, that's great. I love it when that happens. And they'll even tell me about individual ones, which is, great for me to hear if I'm not part of it. But I am quite explicit to my technicians. Hey, did we get this car done? You really helped Mrs. Jones. If we get a verbatim, if we get a direct response from the customer, thanks us for the job, I try to walk those back to the technician. You really help them out because they're going on a trip on Friday, that sort of thing. Because I feel like with my technicians, yes, of course, I want to help them and I want to help everyone who works for me, but I also want them to know what we're doing here, which is helping customers. And then just to circle back, one of my big responsibilities is to make sure that also runs a profitable business. I've got people who've invested money, who've put a lot of energy into us even being here. And I've got a brand, all of those things expect us to be successful business-wise and customers. And I just think those things go hand in hand, not as opposed to each other.
How is the retention in your service department there? Do you a lot of places have a lot of turnover, but I've also seen places that do things the right way, treat their employees well, who also then treat their customers well. They don't have retention problems. How is yours there at Volvo Cars Marin?
So I'll just focus on technicians because I know those numbers pretty well. I've lost 3 technicians in 2.5 years, all of them for commute reasons. We're somewhat in an island. We're in a wealthy county that I think 2 of my technicians live in our county. Otherwise, everyone commutes in. And so we lost 2 who basically got jobs, an hour closer to home. I think all 3 of them were that way. Lost 2, one this year and one last year to that, and one in our first year here. So I've seen different ways of doing it. I've seen where you get a lot of people in, you see who shakes out, and you get rid of other people. Culturally, I think that's kind of tough. I don't like it. It sends a signal that people are disposable. I'd rather get people in here and work as hard as I can with them to get them as close as I can to their goals and move them towards their goals, no matter what they are. And hopefully that builds what they're able to do for the company, builds what they're doing for their own family, et cetera, and keeps them happier. I do think, from my own personal experience, I commute about 30 minutes and I've worked closer to home, and I commute because I enjoy where I work and because I feel like, for a lot of things, I have the possibility of success here, et cetera. But the fact that I'm happy working here 10 hours a day or whatever it ends up being today is a huge part of it. You're only awake 16 hours a day. How many of them do you want to be happy? And my answer is all of them. I want that for people who work here too. I want them to have the opportunity to strive and to be happy doing it.
And how does a good culture translate into a good business, and especially in a service department? How intertwined are the two?
So I have this concept in my head of like a high trust environment, and I've heard different versions of that, and they're all probably true. The way I see it is, if you have people who are actually working as a team who trust each other, what you end up doing is you save a lot of what I call friction time, which is time where you're just making friction and you're not fixing the car, you're not working towards helping people. Because if you can look over and know that everyone else has their back around them and are happy to be there, they're not momentarily disgruntled at work, or they don't feel like they've been treated unfairly, or they feel like they can trust the people who are asking them to work hard every day, because that's what we're doing. Technicians are the obvious example, but it's true at the front too. We're asking those people to do things that are not always easy and often aren't, and for hours on end. But if they trust that we have their back, and I trust that they're doing everything they can, we all trust that we're doing our best. And then we also push to make that best better. And we see it in each other. Like, oh my gosh, last year you wouldn't have been able to do this. You're killing it now. You build a high trust environment where things get done better, get done more cheaply, and you don't have as many mistakes, errors. In the car business, of course, a big one is, how many cars did you crash this year? How much trouble did you create that just adds nothing to anyone's life? And, that number goes down when you have a high trust environment, and when people feel as if they're cared for and they want to, the natural response is then to care about where you work.
Well, Chris, I really enjoyed the conversation. Great stuff. It was great meeting you back at Retail Forum in Chicago back in October, and loved this conversation as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Jamie Butters.
And I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News coordinating producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Nick Bunkley, Vince Bond Jr., John Hutter, and Molly Boygon for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on service and parts, job cuts, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com.
Come back on Monday for a conversation with Mazda CEO Masahiro Moro.
So from now on, battery EV will be taking off, but still, I want to watch customers' actual needs and wants.
If you enjoy the podcast, remember to leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.